In today's rider tip, what we're going to be covering is something very basic, but it's extremely important, and it's something that I still do every day that I go riding. It's the pre-ride bike check. Now, most guys I come across don't even check over their bikes at all. They just whip their bike straight off the trailer, throw their gear on, hop straight onto the track and have a bit of a blast. Now, there's 5 things that I check every single time before I go for a ride. Obviously, fuel is the first one. Then we check spokes, tyre pressures, chain, and also nuts and bolts. Now, the first one is fuel. Now, obviously we don't want to fill the tank all the way to the top because it does add a little bit of weight to your bike. However, don't try to scrimp with fuel too much. The last thing you want to be doing is wondering on those last couple of laps of your practice session if you're going to run out. Next, we've got spokes. Now, spokes tend to bed themselves in once you've had a new bike for a little while, but don't think just because you've had your bike for 6 months or so that you're not prone to having a spoke fall out, give you a puncture, or even shatter a wheel. All you need to get yourself is a nice little spoke spanner, which will do the job just fine. The best tip I can give you with your spokes is if you've got a bunch of loose spokes, make sure you don't swing off the spoke spanner until they're tight one after the other. You need to stagger your selection of spokes so that it evenly tightens up that wheel. Next is your tyre pressures. Now, tyre pressures is something that I come across all the time with riders. They don't realise that temperature change, elevation change, there's so many factors that can alter your tyre pressure a couple of pounds. You always want to try to have, for a senior rider, at roughly 14 psi. If you're a little junior, anywhere around 12 or 13. Now, next of all, we've got chain. We need to do a couple of things with your chain. You've got to make sure that the tension's right. Make sure that your chain is not too loose, but we also want to try to make sure that we keep the lube on the chain. It can double the life of your chain and your sprockets. Now, last but not least, we need to do a bit of a check on the nuts and bolts on the motorcycle. Now, it would literally take you over an hour if you were to individually check every single nut and bolt on the bike. So what I like to do every time before I go for a ride is I just run my eyes over the main bolts on the bike. Check the top collar on your shock spring and also your linkage bolts underneath. One of the most common bolts that comes loose on most bikes is your kickstarter bolt. All these ones, we just run our eye over, have a little bit of a feel if you want. Once you start your bike up and you warm it up, you give the bike a little bit of a rev and you run your eye over all the main bolts that you can see. Now, if there's something that's loose, it rattles and it catches your eye straight away. It's a technique that most of us riders use every time we start our bikes. Well, there you go, guys. Nice, easy little safety tip there. Doesn't take you very long to do, and if it gives you that little bit of extra peace of mind out on the track, it's definitely worth it. Also could save you a few bucks as well. We'll see you next time.